on Thursday afternoon, we got the news that Trevor Lawrence will be remaining in Jacksonville for the foreseeable future with a massive contract extension, 5 years, $275 million. Now, ultimately, I don't think that this was all that much of a surprise. It seemed like this was the direction the Jaguars were going to be headed in for the entire offseason, but what is really generating all of the conversation is over the amount of money that they did give Lawrence. So it is $200 million guaranteed. The average annual value is $55 million per year, which puts him right alongside Joe Burrow. Burrow signed his contract extension last offseason, and he got an almost identical deal, 5 years, $275 million. It was a little bit more guaranteed money, $219 million in the case of Joe Burrow, but I do think that it's important to at least keep in perspective that we know year by year these contracts are going to continue to increase. So as much as Joe Burrow, Trevor Lawrence, I think the vast majority of NFL fans would pick Joe Burrow over Lawrence, but at the same time, just keep that in the back of your mind when you talk about the increase in quarterback salaries per year. And Lawrence also surpassed another handful of very notable players, notable quarterbacks, that signed extensions last season, more than Justin Herbert, Jalen Hurts, and Lamar Jackson. Now, again, keep in mind that when we are having this conversation a year later, Lawrence's deal is coming off of the heels of Jared Goff signing his contract a month ago, where Goff signed a 4-year deal worth $212 million, $53 million per season. Now, a lot of people also had issues with that deal. So, to some degree, if you don't like either of these quarterbacks in Trevor Lawrence and Jared Goff, you can make the argument, two wrongs don't make a right. Just because one person overpays doesn't mean that you need to either. Absolutely fair to some degree. I think that there is a little bit of a difference with Trevor Lawrence in considering where the Jaguars are currently at. They won a playoff game in 2023, but this isn't a franchise that is necessarily fully bought in on. This is a Super Bowl or bust season. They spent the first overall pick on Trevor Lawrence in 2021. And listen, it hasn't been, all pretty up to this point by any means for Trevor Lawrence. Since entering the NFL, he is number one in total turnovers in the entire league. Now, that is in large part fueled to the disastrous rookie season where he had Urban Meyer coming out of retirement to come and coach the Jaguars. All of the drama behind the scenes there. Urban Meyer didn't even last a full season there in Jacksonville, and it was just a mess altogether where the Jaguars had no choice, obviously, but to let him go. We have seen, I feel like, to some degree at least, in today's era, we're seeing more than ever the importance of development from a coaching staff and the way that it has torn down lots of examples of first-round quarterbacks in recent years. So that is something that they obviously righted. They bring in Doug Peterson, and they were able to find a way to put together a season after starting 3-7 to start the 2022-23 season. They were 3-7. They won 6 of their last 7 games. They made the playoffs and pulled off that improbable comeback against the Chargers in the wild card round. And they were even competitive against the Chiefs in the second round as well. So overall, all things considered, especially from the, disaster that they were during the 2022, I'm getting my years mixed up here, but the 2021 season, Trevor Lawrence's rookie year, and how poorly that went for them, all things considered, a playoff berth and win was a massive success for them. And now they are at a point here where Trevor Lawrence last year, sort of the team in general, went in the reverse direction from the year prior, where after a slow start in making the playoffs. In 2023, the Jaguars seem to be in prime position to not just make the playoffs, but maybe make some more noise, where they were 8-3. They were at the top of the conference, and then they lost 5 of their last 6 games, choked away the division, and missed the playoffs. Now, I think that really we saw when this all turned sideways for the Jaguars was that Monday Night Football game where Trevor Lawrence ended up going down with an ankle injury in the fourth quarter. It was the shootout against the Jake Browning-led Bengals, and once Lawrence went down, they end up losing that game in overtime because I think it was CJ Beathard who stepped in for the Jaguars, was just obviously not the same level of production. They bring Trevor Lawrence back the following week on a short week against a very talented Cleveland Browns defense, and he just never looked right, really struggled in that game, and the season just, fell by the wayside from then on out. And that also includes, their one win coming actually in a game where Trevor Lawrence didn't play. He dealt with a shoulder sprain injury. I believe it was against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, CJ Beathard was able to lead the Jaguars to a win against the lowly Carolina Panthers, but that was the one game that the Jaguars won after starting the season 8-3. And obviously extremely disappointing from that lens, but from the perspective of whether or not the Jaguars should have signed Trevor Lawrence, I think that, again, it's not much of a surprise. Lawrence had an unbelievable draft profile coming into the league, which, as we get further and further from that 2021 draft, is going to mean less, but it is still in recent history. He was viewed as the best quarterback prospect since Andrew Luck, and he has shown some flashes throughout his young career. Now, again, not all of it has been perfect, and the turnovers are the number one thing that Trevor Lawrence is going to have to work on. Some of the consistency of the greatness as well, and this feels like it's going to be a little bit of a make or break season for Trevor Lawrence. But that being said, if you're the Jaguars, you just saw Jared Goff get $53 million a year. You know the price is only going to continue to go up as years go on. And as we dive into our next segment and we talk about somebody like Brock Purdy, who has had a lot of success, especially, in relation to team success since he has stepped into the league with the San Francisco 49ers, there's definitely a difference in terms of the, upside and the ceiling of a player like that. We do think, I at least think, that Trevor Lawrence is at least going to hit some level of expectations. Now, I think that he can very clearly be a franchise quarterback. Is he ever going to be MVP caliber? Again, we've seen flashes. The consistency hasn't necessarily been there yet. So that is where, when you're talking all this money, it is some level of concern. But at the same time, ultimately, franchise quarterbacks, whether you're MVP or not, are going to go for this level of money. Jared Goff isn't seen as an all-pro quarterback, and yet he just got the contract that he did, and he's had a lot of blemishes on his resume throughout his year. So again, I have no problems with the Jaguars making this deal whatsoever. Getting it done earlier rather than later is only going to save them money in the long run. I don't believe that Trevor Lawrence is going to be a bust for this franchise. So ultimately, people in Jacksonville were going to lose their jobs if the Jaguars decided to let Trevor Lawrence walk or play out this season and end up being that star that he was thought to be coming into the league, but in a different jersey. So the Jaguars get the deal done. Again, ultimately, I understand. It feels like we have this overreaction as sports fans across all leagues. The NBA, we see it all the time, where, Jaylen Brown just became the highest paid player in the NBA this past offseason. Everybody said that was far too much, and he is likely going to win a finals MVP. Now, I'm not saying, team success or anything like that is a direct correlation. But Jaylen Brown, who was this massive topic, how did he get so much money? He's going to be buried in, within the next couple of years. Jason Tatum this offseason is going to make more money than him. And this is just what we continue to see the market resetting and building up year after year. So I think that if anything, you're going to look at some of these other contracts that are going to come out after Jordan Love or Tua Tagovailoa or Dak Prescott, and we're going to see that much more money being spent on the quarterback position with guys that we still have questions about. But on that note, we have to take our first break, but when we come back on the other side, all of those names I just threw out there are contract extension eligible still. So I want to break down exactly how the Trevor Lawrence deal is going to overall impact the quarterback market. So we are going to dive into all of that. But first, a quick break. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back.